Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought today what we would do is go through a bunch of data mines and also go through a bunch of statements from some Guardian employees, basically talking about some topics which we've seen in the last few days. Basically one about the T51 being changed. Obviously we had the devlog about it for the Battle Pass one. They're going to be changing the one which is in the tech tree, and also about BR decompression, since that was once again a hot topic. I will once again remind everybody, nobody is against BR decompression. There's literally nobody who doesn't want BR decompression, even like the devs up to a point. But certain criteria has to be met to be able to have it happen. It's as simple as that. And if you don't have conversations about that criteria, and if you don't work out how to fix that stuff, the conversation is a non-starter. So hopefully one day we can focus on the correct thing as usual. But yeah, we'll do a video looking at all this stuff, and then tomorrow I'll tackle another topic which has been really silly, which has been going on recently quite a lot, and that is why historical matchmaking is stupid and your immersion doesn't matter. Anyway, let's get into the data mines. So the data mines that we've had over the last few days, what they've basically done is they've added a few market links to certain decorations which have been going around, and also at the same time they have rejuvenated a bunch of the decal stuff in the game. If you've actually had a look at the decals and what's been going on with them, they updated a ton of them, basically making it a lot more clean, and therefore if you have a look at the customization tab and then the decals, it's just a lot easier to be able to read everything. They have new groups, so aircraft, tanks, navy inscriptions, and now everything has been put into countries. So if you click, let's say, Britain, it opens the areas for Britain tanks, navy, and also aircraft. It's fantastic. It works really well, and it looks really nice. There's also the new decal group text for allies and axis, so it's just easier to be able to go through everything. I know it's more lists, it's a few more clicks, but everything is in a much nicer place now, so it's easier to find it. And that has definitely been an issue for quite a long time when it comes to a lot of people. Like they've clicked on certain things, and it's just kind of hard to find certain decals, especially if it's like a special decal and it's in the special section. My special section is like maybe 150 decals, or at least was before this change. Now it's a little bit better. They've also added some new decals. One is definitely a CC decal. I don't know who it is. And then the other one is either for tournaments or it's going to be for a pack. The snail decal that they've added is the Steam Snail, and it actually looks really cool. It's an amazing design. The snail designs that they have, they're so awesome. I wish they just did one pack where you could just buy all of them at once. I'd definitely pick that up, because there have been so many over the years and they all just look fantastic. This one is obviously a snail which is powered by a wonderful steam engine and it just looks absolutely fantastic. The CC decal is the KTS Alliance. I don't know who this is. I don't really watch too much YouTube or content anymore because I'm kind of busy doing my own stuff, but I'm sure somebody will know who this is, so there'll be a new one coming in soon. They also added more debris to the hangar again, or more debris objects overall. And this is fine, it makes the hangar look nicer. The only issue that I have with the new hangar that they've added, which has been added maybe like a week ago now, is it broke all of my custom hangar stuff. So I still haven't got it to work again. There'll be some line of code that I have to change or something, but it's just kind of a pain. And I know it's a personal pain, so it's not like a huge thing, but yeah, it's one of those things which is just kind of annoying, And then in the next set of data mines, they've renamed a decal group name from aircrafts to aircraft, and then also the old decal category texts were removed. And this is basically just all of the ones which are no longer used because they put them into the new categories. So now they've just cleaned it up again, which is really nice. The Seafire LF Mark III, the engine RPM amplitude has been lowered on it. That I've never really been a huge fan of the Seafire when it comes to War Thunder. I feel like when I ground that one out, and then also the other Seafire, they're very heavy, is probably the best way of putting them. I don't know why. I don't know whether they're too high BR or they just don't feel like, well, Spitfires, because Spitfires are supposed to be quite maneuverable. They generally push themselves around the air pretty well, whereas the Seafires don't. They struggle a little bit when it comes to their energy retention. They also have a new menu text, which is sign in via QR code. So that might be interesting once they add that in. I'm not sure entirely how that's going to work, but maybe this is a new thing for advertisement, or maybe this is a new thing for something else. But yeah, it's they're adding in QR codes to be able to sign in with, which is pretty interesting. And then the next port of call is, of course, talking about BR decompression, because for some reason, when it comes to the overall conversations that we have in this overall community, we have to keep going over the same ones over and over and over again, even though answers are given to them and we know that it's a time issue. I don't understand why people are this impatient. I feel like during these times, where at least the last few weeks, we haven't had any really new news, just some change logs and, a few little events here and there. People get super bored and then turn to the crazies once again, who have to propagate some ridiculous stuff. And then what ends up happening is they get drawn in by the 10% of normal stuff and then hit them with the 90%, and then we get a bunch of crazies running around. It seems to happen every single year in War Thunder, and I don't know why. It's so, just boring at this point, having the same conversations about the same things. It must be so draining for people like community managers and others who have to just say the same things over and over and over again. For me, most of the time, I just ignore most of it because it's, as I said, it's just repeating the same things. It's like being a robot. But we are once again back at the wonderful position of talking about BR decompression, which I will once again mention that there is nobody who exists who doesn't want BR decompression. But you also have to be very careful with BR decompression because you can kill certain parts of the game if you decompress too quickly. If you don't believe me, there are certain parts of the game which are kind of dead because of BR decompression. Stuff such as 7.0 or 7.3 air, or even 6.7 or 6.3 air, it takes a very long time to find games. And yes, the SU-11 exists, and yes, that thing is a monster and should go up in BR. That's not a decompression thing, that just needs to go up in BR. But the thing is, because of what's happened at that level, where stuff has been moved out either side of it, you are left in a situation where you're sat there waiting for queue times for ages. At the bottom end of the game, you have the same issue with certain BR ranges, and it's very, very annoying. Here, let's go through an example. So let's say that everything right now is at 11.3, like it is in aviation. Go and have a look at how many 10.7 planes there are, right? Now go and have a look at how many 10.3 planes there are. Now go have a look at how many 10.0 planes there are. Now, if we bump it up to 11.7, at least some of the aircraft from 11.3 go to 11.7, now everything else has to move around the place. You know what ends up happening? 11.0s stop existing and people stop playing them, because it isn't very fun playing 11.0s versus 11.7s, just like it isn't very fun playing 10.7s versus 11.3s right now. This creates a black hole BR, which means that the BR below it becomes really strong, because either they get quantitatively matchmaking up into the top BR, which everybody is playing, so you only have to face at least or at most 25% of the top brackets, or you get down BR'd, which is what happens most of the time, because a lot of the meta premiums are around 9.7, 10.0, and you stomp, which is why stuff like the Mirage 3C, the Mirage 3E, no matter how many times French players tell me are bad, are very good aircraft, especially when they're modded out. They are fantastic. They work really, really well. The same reason why stuff like the MiG-21 SMT also works incredibly well, because the vast majority of 10.3s either have insanely good missiles or insanely good speed or countermeasures and a decent, set of pretty much everything. F5C is also there, which is very good. F5A exists, which is there, which is also very good. You have stuff like the F4C, which gets murdered by 10.3s. You have the A5C, which does very well at around 10 OBR. You have stuff like the F104, which has the speed stuff. But overall, because you don't have a 10.7 BR, it cannot keep the 10.3s in check. And because the 11.0s all get sucked up into 11.3, then you have just a meta BR at 10.3. This is what happens every single time. If you don't believe me, you can have a look at ground. Right now, at ground, at 11.0, there is a ton of people playing 10.0. Because, first of all, you have the premiums, such as the Leopard 2A4. You have also the Challenger, which was just added. And also, there's a lot of 9.7 premiums as well. You know what you don't have a lot of people playing? 10.3. Because there's hardly any vehicles, once again, at 10.3 because of how the matchmaking works. Because why the hell would you play a 10.3 vehicle? Even a 10.7 right now in the current BR matchmaking, you basically just got the Arietes. The 10.7 Italian lineup is really, really good. You've also got just a Challenger 2 if you want to bring that. But because of the 11.0 bracket, 10.3 dies. 10.3 doesn't exist. So that means 10.0s start facing a lot of 9.0s to 10.0s, and they start annihilating everything. And it's really, really annoying. And it's the main thing that's annoying is people don't seem to see this. And I don't understand why. I don't know if they don't play these BRs or they don't see what's going on, but it's a very, very simple thing that happens. Every time you move BRs, you create black holes. And then if you move them again, you will create 2 black holes. And if you create 2 black holes, or if you create them too quickly, close to each other, there is not enough time for people to fill the first black hole again once it becomes a nice BR to play. And therefore, with 2 black holes, that creates a BR gap. And people stop playing that area because they can't find games because the queue times are too long, right? It's as simple as that. This is not hard. This is not rocket science. I've talked about this many times. It is like so simple to understand, and I don't understand why it isn't getting through people's heads. I understand that everybody wants BR decompression, including me, by the way, but it is a patience game. And one thing it seems as a player base or as a society that we seem to be lacking right now is patience. And I don't know why. It's very, very weird. Like, literally, just wait like 3 or 4 months, and there'll be an extra BR set up. Or wait maybe 6 months. Last year we basically went from 10.7 to 11.3, and then also 5.7 to 6.7 in naval. Huge changes. Same with helicopters. We went from like 11.0 to 11.3 or whatever, or maybe 10.7 to 11.3 or 10.7 to 11.0. Whatever it is, they went up. They decompressed. But no matter how many times people decompress stuff, it's not enough. And you get the same clowns who come out who don't understand how this stuff works because they don't play these bloody BRs enough and only play specific ones and wonder why everything's falling apart. Smin says here, in response to one of them, we have clarified both the multiple factors, the multiple values, factors, biases, and statistical elements are considered and reviewed within the process. However, the developers do not wish to disclose all of the details of exactly how things are calculated down to specific levels. Those details have never been disclosed, so I'm unable to provide more information on the matter further than what I have already provided. So this is basically saying, look, all of this stuff matters when it comes to this stuff, but we're not going to tell you all of the values, which they bloody shouldn't. Because I've seen what happens when people get all of the values. They just use all the meta stuff and don't use anything else. That's just how all this stuff works. But then you do get the opposite problem where people think Thunderskill is a really good value of source for things to be able, to chat about how win rates work and how all of this stuff works and how different, nations are doing against others. But Thunderskill relies on the fact that people have to input their own data, right? They have to be able to request their own data. And once again, Thunderskill doesn't even have an Israeli country in it. It doesn't have China in it yet. What the site is built upon is just throwing numbers in. I don't even know the last time it got updated. Like, it's a horrific source of information and a horrific categorization setup as well. I don't know why anybody cares about it. Then also, the next thing is it says you may well have no issues on a given day. This was talking about queue times. It says, however, decompression requires a 24-hour round-the-clock compatibility in all regions with expansions of BRs to be able to support it. Several other factors are involved, such as vehicle population within a given bracket and possible queue combinations, which is, once again, just the same thing. As you let a BR bracket fill out, which it does over time, or even if it doesn't fill out over time, this gives the information to the devs on what they need to change and where they need to change it. So once again, it's just a patience thing. Come on. Like, it's not hard to understand. Now, go and have a look at the Battle Pass stuff, go and have a look at the Summer Challenge stuff, and completely forget this exists because you have the short-term memory of a hamster. Gromvoiny also has some notes about the T-51 and also some other thoughts. So he says, we will remove 2 wrong torpedoes on the T-51B since this is a historical, and the removal of a stabilizer from a tank is no small change either. Obviously talking about the Ariete in the past. The Italian Ariete, the premium, actually had its stabilizer removed due to historical accuracy issues. And it annoyed a lot of people because, well, it basically made it worse. They also dropped it in BR though, so, made it a little bit better. The T-51B now will basically have better guns but worse torpedoes. So there is a reason to take one over the other, but generally it's still a bad battle pass vehicle. Like, I don't know how else to put it. It's a rough one, is the T-51, because it's an awkward vehicle is the best way of putting it. It doesn't do, you cannot run it at 100% like efficiency ever. Basically what you can run it at is you can run it at 50 by having the guns on target or having the torpedoes on target. Like, you can't have both, and that is always annoying when it comes to a vehicle. He also puts in a few other ideas as well. He says you can tell that to all the people who complained each season about how useless a low-rank premium is for them and how they're never going to use it. Now they've got something useful and also universal. This was in response to a comment which said, agree, or at least do some easy asset flips for the other nations. There are more low-tier vehicles that they can do without putting in too much effort, but even that seems to be too much for them. Glad I've been able to get both coupons for every Battle Pass, so I don't have to spend money on these Battle Pass seasons. There haven't really been a season for me that I felt this one is worth buying since the first few seasons. Well, first of all, when it comes to this, obviously the target market for getting people into the Battle Pass is not the person who's writing this, because they're already invested. So you'd have to do something catastrophic to not get this person, to do the Battle Pass stuff, because they're obviously playing the game a ton anyway, getting to level 125. So the idea that, they really care about that style of opinion, they care about numbers, at the end of the day. They care about statistics. And it's a good idea to care about statistics over opinions, because when you're looking on the forums, or when you're looking on the Reddit, or when you're looking on YouTube, or when you're looking on Discord, or other than that, you get opinions from a very small part of the player base, which is not going to represent anything apart from themselves. So the looking at a statistical overview of everything is always a better idea. If they are seeing positive changes in what they've done with the Battle Pass compared to what they're doing before, then they're going to continue with it. If they don't see it, then they're going to revert, or they're going to try something else. This is just basic stuff at the end of the day. Battle passes over time lose their value. If you have a look at most games out there, most battle passes usually have, 1 or 2 eye-catching things, but if you compare them to the first seasons of the battle pass, if you just look at overall value, they are going to be a lot lower. This is because the first few seasons of battle passes are designed to hook you in, and once you are hooked to doing them, then they can lessen the value, so therefore it's easier for them to make, and they can make more money off you, because maybe before it's a loss leader, so they're getting you in, and it's costing them more money to make it, and then eventually it turns over a profit. That's the general idea, just like a lot of businesses in their first few years. It's the same structure. It's just a bit easier to do with a company or a game like War Thunder because there's already a heavily invested set of player base. So yeah, pretty much as simple as that. And when it comes to low rank premium, I've always liked the low rank premium. I'd prefer to have a low rank premium, but at the same time, Gromvoiny's right. I never use them. The only time I ever use them is because they have a battle pass challenge for them. But also at the same time, I never hardly use any of the other ones as well. The only time I use them is when a new vehicle comes out, and I've already spaded all the stuff in that area. But I also understand I'm a very unique case when it comes to this stuff. Like, I'm not a person who is grinding through most of the tech trees because I've already ground through them. So, it's taking my opinion on these things and pushing them forward. It's not going to really resonate with a lot of people because it's how everything is for me. He also follows on with another, a little bit more snarky comment, but that's what Grom does. And he says, Paul said, you should already know you can't satisfy everyone. There will always be someone complaining. It would make more sense to listen to the majority of the community, not to rare opinions of some players, which is kind of what we've just said, right? And Grom says, it wasn't some rare opinion. There was actually a ton of complaining. It's not even rank 3, so you can't do events in it, etc., etc., both in the Western and RU community. So it really irks me when some players try to write this off as Gaijin's greed. There is a clear divide and you can't satisfy everyone, like you rightfully say. And, that's very true. No matter what you do, there's going to be people who complain. For me, looking at the vehicles from this battle pass, the T-51's a tough one, but the other two are pretty decent picks. And, I've seen people not be happy to see another Soviet heavy, or a top Soviet prize once again for the battle pass. Even though, the other ones, they're half good, half bad, like the SU-8's pretty crap, but the PT-7657 obviously is very good. But the fact is, if you have a look at how much like the premium account stuff costs, you're basically getting like $4 or $5 worth of premium account out of the battle pass. And if you have a look at how much generally rank 2 premiums cost, especially 50% off or something, they're probably around about the same price or same value. So they've just swapped the value of a rank 2 premium with the amount of premium time that you get. So that's all they've really done. They're trying to find solutions to make people a little bit more happy when it comes to what is put into the battle pass to get a bit more value out of it. Now, whether you see that as value or don't, then, it's obviously slightly different. The other thing to also mention is there's a lot of people asking for more event vehicles for minor nations. And I understand why, because usually the minor nations kind of get shafted. I personally would also like to see more minor nation event vehicles, but I'm not interested in high-tier minor event nation vehicles. I'm interested in mid or low-tier ones, such as rank 3s, for example. Rank 3s are perfect for minor nations. And the reason for this is because there are a few factors when it comes to War Thunder which stop people playing other tech trees. The first one is the dailies and the specials, and also the events. All of them require rank 3s. So if you don't have rank 3s in a nation, you're not going to be able to do it. There was even a challenge this battle pass, which was you needed to play X amount of games with different nations. So, a rank 3 premium there would have been very useful. So if they can throw some of them in and be able to, try and get people into these tech trees, I think that's positive. Kind of like when you have a look at the winter or the summer events, what they usually do is the minor vehicles, so the lower rank vehicles, they're usually for what are classed as the minor tech trees, where the higher event vehicles are for the major ones, and they're event vehicles, not premiums. So this works really well, and I think they should continue to do that idea. I think it's really nice. But also, at the same time, you got to think about a few other things when it comes to more event vehicles for minor nations. The first thing is the more event vehicles they get, the less that they get in the tech tree. And this means that this extends the problem that you have for them. And the problem is they don't all have full lineups at all BRs. The reason why America, Germany, and USSR, and even Britain to a decent extent, are very strong is because whatever BR you pick, or the vast majority of BRs you pick, you will still have some kind of lineup, or at least a decent lineup with 1 to 2 to 3 elements. That isn't true for something like Sweden or Israel or something like France at certain BRs. What you have is you have very, very strong BRs for those nations, but then nothing in between. Or you have one tank by itself, such as recently for Sweden, the PVKV3. Because of the movement of the PVKV3, it doesn't have a lineup anymore. It's just screwed. So when you have a look at those scenarios, that doesn't really happen in those major nation tech trees. So the more event vehicles you put into the minor nations, the less those vehicles you can't put in the tech tree because, well, they're already the event vehicles. So it would be much better just to put those in the tech tree so people can have proper lineups and people can actually have fun grinding them out. The other thing is also the chicken or the egg scenario. And this comes down to statistical analysis compared to actual, people's opinions. So many people want minor nation event vehicles. Generally, if you actually have a look into these people, they play the minor nations and they're very loud. Usually the minority speaker when it comes to, communities is loudest because they want their voice heard because they feel like they're not being listened to. But if you have a look at the statistics, the reason why the vast majority of event vehicles go to these nations, and this has been confirmed by many Gaijin employees in the past, it's because the vast majority of people play those nations. So therefore, you follow basically the player base. So it isn't the company guiding the player base. It is the company reacting to where the player base is. So therefore, it's a chicken or the egg scenario. Now, generally, I'm sure the company could guide the player base to different areas if they decided to put in more high-ranking premiums for those minor nations. But the question is, what effect would that have? And also, they have done that in the past with a decent amount of vehicles. The Orbital is probably one of the examples. The Kafir C2 is also a more recent one, which people seem to forget about, just like people forget Israel's in the game. And because they've done these things, they have the stats on how many people are getting these things. So they can work out, okay, what do people mostly want? Then we're going to focus on that stuff. It really is as simple as that. They're not trying to do anything devilish, or they're not trying to promote certain areas over others. They're a business. They follow the customers. They don't guide them. And that's just how all this stuff works. And there's a lot of crazy theories out there about why they do the stuff that they do, whether it's nationality bias or whether it's sticking it to the man, or whether it's, trying to frustrate people to play more in the minor nations for some reason. But at the end of the day, it's money. It's always going to be money. It's never going to be anything else. And because it's money, that means popularity matters, and that means most decisions are going to be based around that. And if you start thinking in those terms, and start thinking about how they can make something as profitable as possible, which might not always seem to be the most obvious, then everything starts making sense. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Nicholas Richardson, Elove Goat, Pyman675, Winter Scientist, Merciless Reaper, Jerry Prevolt, Megadino King, Orange Tail, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Uncle Bean, Sem Arslan, Derek R., Bareen, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.